Hey, thanks for joining me for the third episode of the Woolens and Nosh podcast. I'm your hostess, Michelle, and I'm coming to you from a small town in Vermont. You can find me on Instagram as Woolens and Nosh, and you can find me on Ravelry as Michelle the Maker, and I spell Michelle with one L. And so we're going to talk about knitting, and we're going to bake an apple butter pie, and then I've got some shop update news for you at the end of the podcast. Okay? So, true to form, we're going to start off with our baking segment. I had never heard of an apple butter pie. Had you guys? I thought it was going to be so precious and bring out my homemade preserved apple butter and show that off during the segment. And no, I'm not, because I gave it all away at Christmas. So yay me for being generous and not hoarding my apple butter. Boo me for not being able to use it myself. Anyway, but this is a really neat recipe, perfect to add to, like, if you do Sunday dinners or family get-togethers, something a little different but still comforting. Very quick and easy to do. It'd be perfect for bake sales. We do an annual bake sale or pie sale in town here for our high school fundraising efforts, and I'll be making several of these next year. They're very inexpensive and easy to throw together, and you just don't see it, so it'll be a nice, unique addition. And then, of course, Thanksgiving. It's a good solid pie. Give it a try. All right, so as I said, we're going to make some apple butter pie, and the recipes can be found below for both the pie and the pie crust. I'm using Rose Levy Barenbaum's cream cheese pie crust recipe. I'm making a double batch in the food processor as she suggests. All of my ingredients are very cold. They've been in the freezer or straight out of the fridge. That includes the flour, and you just put the flour and I think a little salt and the cream cheese in the food processor, and you whiz that up just until the cream cheese starts to break up. The thing I've gotten used to using the food processor, but you want to be careful not to overwork it. You want your fats to remain in somewhat large chunks. So I've got that worked in. Now I'm putting in my frozen butter. I cut it up into about 1/4 inch cubes and had it in the freezer for a good half hour to an hour, and so they are very cold. Going right in there, and then I'm going to blitz that again. Again, just briefly, just a quick pulse, 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 and don't overwork it. You still have to add your liquids and pulse again. So here I can show you, there's still pretty decent sized chunks of butter that are in there. So it looks like I ran it several times, but don't overwork it. It's easy to let happen. And I'm just kind of loosening up everything so that when I do my final pulse, it'll get a good process. So that's a little vinegar to help tenderize the flour, and then some ice cold water. And that's it for ingredients. We're going to blitz it one more time. That is so simple. The moisture content in the cream cheese helps to take away some of the guesswork on how much water to put in to the dough. So now I'm going to pour it in a bowl. I want to make 2 equal sized discs. The easiest way to do that is by weighing it out. So I pour the dough mixture into a bowl on the scale, and then I will take out half and form that into a disc. And Rose suggests that you put it in a Ziploc bag. I'm going to do that. First, I'm going to show you, these are nice big chunks, but they don't really stick together yet, you'll notice. They're kind of loose. There's some big pieces of fat. Um, and yeah, I got distracted. So put half of your dough in the bag, and then you're going, it's a little difficult for me because the counter's kind of high, but you're going to take the top of the bag and smush and spread, and smush and spread, and smush and spread. And even though when it was all loosey-goosey in the bowl, when you start to smush and spread, it has just enough moisture to make it stick together. So don't get all worried that it didn't stick together in the food processor. This is where you make that happen. And smush and spread until it all comes together. And then set down some plastic wrap and take your dough out. She claims that I have not made this recipe before right now, just so you know. I was trying it out for the very first time, and I think she said that she tested it 52 times before getting it perfect. So I felt like, gosh, that's a lot of effort. I bet it's really good. And it is. Cold ingredients, and I feel like she says it doesn't shrink, and that was my experience. It did not shrink. You should be able to do a blind bake of this crust without it puddling down in the bottom of your pan. It browns beautifully without an egg wash. And so now that I have it in a disc, I'm going to put it in the fridge for 20 minutes. I made more than two. I made a quadruple recipe. It's always nice, if you're going to be making pie dough anyway, go ahead and double up your recipe and then put some in the freezer so that next time you need to make pie or whatever you might need a crust for, it's already ready. So wrap it in plastic and then wrap it in foil tightly and store it in the freezer for several months. That's all I got to say about it. I'm thinking about those old Reynolds Wrap commercials with the ladies and how they showed you to make a little pouch and then, anyway. Quick and easy. And you're ready for next time. You don't have to get it all out again. All right, so here it is. It's been chilling. You can see the big nodules of butter and cream cheese in there. It smells like cream cheese. It's delicious smelling. I'm very excited about it. So now you're just going to roll it out. This disc should fill comfortably a 9-inch pie plate, which is what I'm going to be using. And try to sparingly use the flour as you're rolling it out. The more flour you add, the tougher it's going to be. And now, because it's very cold, I'm just kind of pressing on the dough before I start rolling to try to warm it up a little bit more so it doesn't crack when I go to roll it. If you find that it starts to crack as you try to roll it, then it's still too cold. Just give it another minute or, 5 to 10 minutes on the counter, and it should be fine. So rolling it out, I love to roll out pie dough. The thing I want to point out here is that I'm not taking my rolling pin over the edge of the dough. I'm stopping just shy of that, and that's going to help me keep it from basically being too thin on the edges. So stop just shy of that and turn it a quarter turn after every roll. And that'll help to make sure that the gluten that's being formed in there is formed evenly, and it won't stretch or shrink as you're baking it up. So I've got it now where I think it's big enough. I take my pie plate, turn it upside down, make sure I have at least 1 inch or maybe 2 inches on the edges, and I can fold it up. Some people like to roll it over their pin. I just like to fold it up, and then I can put the tip of that triangle in the center and then unfold it nice and neat so that I don't have any issues afterward. And then take a minute and push the dough down into the pan so it's totally up against the edges of the pie plate. Try to, if you feel like it's getting too warm, if it's starting to get sticky, you can put it back in the fridge for a minute or two so that you don't want the butter to start melting during this process. If it starts melting, then it won't flake up your crust. It'll just soak into the flour before it has a chance to make your crust flaky. Fold under the edges and then shape to your desired shape. You can flute it, you can, there's all kinds of ways to decoratively enhance your pie crust edges. I'm trying to practice this way where my left hand, the thumb in the back and towards the center of the pie plate, is staying still, and I'm pulling towards my stomach with my outside thumb to try to make that wavy, gravy sort of fluted edge. And then prick the bottom of your pie plate to make sure you don't get bubbles. It will release some steam without causing a big bubble on the bottom of your pie. And then throw it in the freezer while you make your filling. So the majority of time that you're going to spend making this pie is making the crust. And that's only if you choose to make your crust. This would totally be fine in a frozen pie crust, like I said. So the rest of it comes together super fast. You just whisk together a couple of eggs, and then you add in a little bit of sugar and cornstarch and maybe some cinnamon and maybe a tiny bit of salt. And then you add in some apple butter. You don't need a hand mixer. You don't need anything special except if you have some of your homemade apple butter, that would be great. I do remember reading in the recipe that everybody's apple butter is a little bit different. So I'm using store-bought today. I usually make mine nice and thick. It's very similar in consistency to what I got at the store. But if your apple butter is a little thinner, your results might vary. But give it a try. I'm sure it'll turn out great. And then mix that all in, and then you want to add 2 cups of milk. You could use evaporated milk, but you do need to use whole milk. The recipe says specifically not to use a low-fat milk. It won't turn out right. Mix it gently and completely, and then pour it into your frozen pie crust. I go ahead and because I hadn't made this before, I didn't know if it would bubble over or not, and then a lot of times the butter from the pie crust will drip out, so I always put it on a a sheet pan. I like to cover it in foil in case it bubbles over, then I don't have to scrape things off. And it goes into the oven for about an hour or so. So how do you tell when it's done? It's kind of like a pumpkin pie. Now see there, it just barely jiggle, jiggle, stop. Jiggle, jiggle, stop. See, jiggle, jiggle, stop. You can also, wait, you don't want it to be loosey-goosey. No, you want it jiggle, jiggle, stop. And you can also put a knife in the center of the pie. It should come out clean. Now right here, I'm getting a little mad because I have to poke a hole into my pretty pie. And I don't want to, but I do want to show you that it comes out clean. So now you just let that cool. While that's cooling, go ahead and make your cream cheese whipped cream. So I took whatever's left from my cream cheese pie crust, or anywhere between, I think it marks it in ounces on the package. Just 2 or 3 ounces of cream cheese, a cup of whipped cream, a couple tablespoons of powdered sugar, and you just whip it all until it gets to stiff peaks. I put in a little vanilla, and it turned out great. I will say that it looks nice and stiff here. Look, I got a nice stiff peak. It looks gorgeous. After sitting for a couple of hours, it lost its stiffness. It got kind of runny. Not like super runny, but a little bit runny. Oh, wait. You know, beaters go to the kids. I need to stop looking out of the bowl. So Molly's going to come and claim her prize. Anyway, so it did kind of loosen up a little bit, but I whipped it again in the mixer and it got stiff. So if that happens to you, I suspect it was my cream cheese that got a little off. Sometimes that off-brand doesn't do you like it should. So yeah, this is fun. It gets that almost like a little creamy ribbon in the center. Put a dollop of cream cheese whipped cream. I used a little apple chip for some crunch. A little cinnamon on top. Took it from kind of plain to a little fancy. Everybody said that was unnecessary, but I would do it again. And you can see a nice crispy bottom on that pie crust. Turned out good. I hope you guys will try it and let me know what you think. Yum. Okay. There's a lot to talk about today. So we'll go ahead and dive into the knitting. I guess the first thing I'll show is my granny stripe blanket. I love seeing everybody else's blanket, and I feel a little weird showing mine because it's a scrappy blanket and it just keeps getting bigger, and I feel like you're like, and? I'm not going to tell you all the yarns that I put in it because half of them I don't know. But here we go. It's big enough for like 3 people to lay under. And I'm probably about halfway finished with it. The big news about it is I finished my magic knot ball that I showed last time, that one that covered my head, and I made 2 more. Let's see. So here's this one. And then here's the second one. I haven't watched it yet, but I saw that Very Pink Knits just released a tutorial on how to make a magic knot. So if you're interested or curious about how to put these together, it took me about maybe an hour to sit there and get all my scraps together, and of course I'm a little bit particular. I don't want them to be more than 20 grams because then I get bored. So I will weigh out 20-gram skeins from bigger balls of scrap yarn. But you can check out those. There's a couple of really good tutorials on how to put together the magic knot, and then you just tie a knot, and then I have it on my ball winder and I wind it until that scrap is almost done, and then I tie the next knot, and then I wind it until that scrap is almost done, and it gets kind of addictive. And I've got the Stanwood ball winder, so you can get a really large cake on there before it starts wanting to fall over the edge and get caught in the gears. So that's pretty fun. And I'm just gonna leave it in my lap because it's cozy. Anyway, so that's my first work in progress. Flying along. Yeah, that's all I need to say about that. So I think the last episode I showed you that I was trying out some cashmere yarn, an MCN base, merino cashmere nylon, for the Woolens and Nosh shop. And I had started the Love Bug Mitten, and that is by Cassandra Curtis. And I finished the first one. It's a one-size pattern. I think it's supposed to be an adult size. I'm going to be giving this to my daughter. I need to get the other one made up, but it will fit her very well. She's 10. For me, it's on the small side. So if I were going to make modifications to the pattern, for me, I would probably add 4 or 5 stitches on either side of the cable, so that I wouldn't have so much stretching across the palm. And I would do another couple of repeats of the cable pattern so that I'd get a little more length and cover me up. But otherwise, it was a very well written pattern and an enjoyable knit. And it didn't have charts. Personally, I would have preferred charts, but that's okay. And I think I used a size 2 needle, 2 circulars to knit it on. Yeah, I think it's adorable. So she's anxious to have the second one of those, but she can just wait. She's also waiting for her sweater. I'll talk about that next. The bubble sweater, I did finish the body. This is a pattern by Stephen West. So the body is done, it's bound off, and I just have the sleeves to do. And by all accounts, this should be finished. I got distracted. I just got distracted and pulled in another direction. But I would like to have it finished by the next time I podcast. So the way I'm going to do that, have you guys heard of this goal setting technique, where it's no good to say, oh, I really want that sweater to be done. I really ought to finish that sweater. What I'm going to do is commit to knitting on it at least 30 minutes a day. So if it's the only knitting I get to do for the day, then that's what I'm going to work on. But if I do just a little bit every day, it's going to be done before I know it. So I know my daughter would really like to wear this before it gets too warm, and I'm sure it will fit her in the fall, but you know, she's been watching the progress and would like to have it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to putting in 20 to, look, I'm already backpedaling, 20 to 30 minutes a day to get the sleeves done, and then, so maybe we'll have it done by next podcast. We'll see. All right, and then I think the only other work in progress I have is one that I'm going to save it. My sorrel sweater. I'm going to save it towards the end of the podcast because it ties into my shop update. Okay, so I've got some new things to show you. Let's see. So the first thing, well, they all kind of tie into the shop update. All right, well, I'll just show you. So inject story. My husband and I got married in January 12 years ago, and so we were planning our anniversary, and we decided we only live 3 hours, like literally 3 hours from our doorstep to the middle of the city. We live 3 hours away from Montreal, and we decided that's what we wanted to go and do for our anniversary, is have a weekend trip up there. And of course, me being the knitter with my little sneaky brain says, ooh, we can go to Espace Tricot while we're there, honey. So we did. We drove up and we stayed in Old Montreal at a hotel down there, and got on the metro and went across town and then walked down to the yarn shop. I'm so glad I went. It is a tiny shop that has an extraordinary amount of fantastic yarns. They have it packed from floor to super high ceiling. So many treasures are in that shop. I was in there for almost 2 hours. I had left Dave in a coffee shop down the street so that he could enjoy his coffee, and I didn't know there wasn't anywhere for him to sit in the shop, so that turned out really well. They've got a work table and shelving, and there's nowhere to, like, I sat on a step stool trying to get out of the way and contemplate my yarn choices, but that was it. So I'm glad I left him in the coffee shop. But I ended up picking up this sweet bag by, can you see it? Jezebel, I think is it called. And it's one of these bags that you hang over your arms so that you can knit while you're standing up. And I also got, oh, the little pin on it. I got that little pink pin. I think it's probably blowing out. And it's got a black and white gingham fabric on the inside. Nice and sturdy. And I've loved it. The main reason I've loved it is because I've got a colorwork project in here and with 2 balls of yarn, so I can have the yarn coming out of each side and it doesn't get tangled. Even if it's not on my arm, it can be coming out of this bag and it doesn't get tangled because the handle keeps it separated. So while I was at the shop, I had a terrible, paralyzing moment of, oh my God, what do I get? And ultimately, I decided to go souvenir yarn route, and I got their Grace brand of merino cashmere silk. And I don't know how to say this. This one is Chateau, and this one is OGILVY. I don't know. Anyway, beautiful tonal, dark sagey sort of green with that. And the project that I was going to make with it, and I probably will make one day, is the Shyamalan Snood by Donna Smith Designs. And I got home and I thought, I do want to make that snood, but I'm not sure I want to make it with this yarn. It's delicious, and I might want to wait, and I haven't truly decided if that's what I want to use that yarn for. But I did want to make that pattern, so I decided to use Woolens and Nosh yarn, my yarn. Now you guys know, or might not know, I do mostly self-striping yarns. I am starting to branch out. There'll be a little bit more about that in a second. I think a lot of times people get stuck about what to use self-striping yarn for besides socks. And if you're not a sock knitter, you know, what do you care about self-striping yarn? Well, you can use it for other things. And I'm trying to branch out with my sample knitting so that you can see what can be done with this yarn besides just socks. So you can use it for hats and mittens, sometimes for the sleeves of sweaters. Sometimes you can do baby sweaters with it, but this time I decided to do the cowl. So the pattern is a giant infinity cowl. It's knit in the round, and you cast on provisionally with scrap yarn, and you knit in just a giant tube, and then at the end you will Kitchener together the ends so that you'll have a big circle, and you can wrap it around your head a couple of times. So this is the Hello You Rainbow Self-Striping Yarn. It's a fingering weight, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and I'm holding it or paired with a dark, I call it darkest hour, very dark charcoal, not quite black, but I think it's a great contrast for this pattern. I started it, so today's Thursday, and I started it Sunday. I started it Saturday, I messed it up, I tore it out, so I really started it on Sunday, and on Sunday I had up to there done. It just took me over. It was so fun, so engaging. And the pattern has, I think, 14 different color work designs in it, this nice, pretty, bold graphic. And I think I'm almost done. I have one more repeat of the circle dots up here before I move on to the next. But I love it. I'm knitting it on a US 4 20-inch circular, I think. No, this is a 3.75 millimeter. I think the pattern calls for a 4, but I'm a pretty tight knitter. So I went up a needle size. So, highly, highly enjoyable and fun to look at. My daughter's already claimed it. When it's finished and no longer being used as a sample, she's going to insist on having it. It should take 1 skein of each, the self-striping yarn and the solid. And oh look, where it transitioned here, they look like little pineapples, don't they? I love that. And then I'm gonna have a couple of kits. I've got 3 skeins of that left, and I'll have the coordinating black skein to go with it, and I'm gonna put that in the shop tomorrow at the update on March 6th. Okay, so you too can have a fun, engaging knit that's nice and bright and very graphic of your very own. All right, so that's fun. The next work in progress, it's not really a work in progress, it's done. I did a sample sock, and I'll tie this into shop news as well. So this is my new self-striping colorway. I'm calling it Swizzle. You're like, Michelle, why are you calling it Swizzle? Because the last 2 vacations my husband and I have been able to take, I'm pretty spoiled. Dave is my husband, and he really enjoys. We don't go out on a lot of dates together. You know, we're pretty homebody most of the time, but every once in a while, we just need to get away, just the 2 of us. And luckily, between my parents and his parents, we can, and Daniel is my oldest son, and he's 24. He doesn't need anybody to watch him. And then our daughter has been able to go stay for a week at her grandparents' house while we've gone on a cruise, which I feel very lucky about. But the last 2 times we went to Bermuda. And if you haven't been, go look it up. It's such a beautiful island. One of the biggest impressions that I had, you know, I've been to the beach in South Carolina and North Carolina, and a lot of times at the coast, along the shore, you'll have fun, bright colored houses. And there's lots of different cities that have, you know, pastel-y, fun, bright colored houses. But the thing about the houses in Bermuda is they were all that way. All of the houses on the whole island were these, it was like somebody took jelly beans and threw them in a jar. Like, it's an island of jelly bean houses. Every color under the rainbow that you can imagine, bright and beautiful. And they all have white roofs. And we found out the reason for that is they're made out of limestone, and the roof acts as a water filtration system. So when it rains, it funnels and filters the water down into a tank under the house so that you can collect water, because they're on an island and they don't have a lot of fresh water sources there, right? So very clever, very pretty. But so that was the inspiration for the Swizzle socks. And then I did a coordinating mini. The national drink, or adult beverage, alcoholic drink, is the rum Swizzle. And it's got, I think it has 2 different kinds of rum and pineapple juice and something else that turns it kind of coral orangey color. So I did that for the heels and toes. And here it is skeined up on my sport weight base. And this base just took the color in so, The colors are just super intense. The sample is knit on the fingering weight. And that'll be available in the shop tomorrow. I'm so excited about these. They make me happy. Aren't they just happy? It's not been a long, hard winter. I haven't thought it was. But I am really ready for some lightening of the clothing and bright colors and longer days. And that's why I made these. I needed some bright happy in my life. All right. And then my last knitting to talk about is my sorrel sweater. One of the most recent fingering weight yarn plus lace weight mohair sweaters or garments that has been put out recently. I love these things. I love the way they feel. I love the way they look. It's like everything's in soft focus and they're just great. So I'll show it to you. Oh, let's see, who's it by? Wool and Pine. Yeah. Okay, so I used my fingering weight superwash Targhee base and I dyed myself because I didn't have a sweater's quantity of fingering weight yarn. So I dyed myself a speckled color that's got like kind of silver mauvey background with pops of raspberry and chocolate. I should call it chocolate covered cherries or something like that. Anyway, so I dyed that up. And then I also dyed up the I'm calling it Ice Wine mohair gradient set. And I'm going to put a picture in here because I've been knitting it. So anyway, so I don't have them to show you all. It was super pretty, but the top. So I opted to start with my very darkest mohair color, and I'm working down to the lightest color mohair. So this pattern specifically has you fade in your fingering weight yarn, and it held the mohair constant throughout. So I didn't have a sweater's quantity of fingering weight yarn, and I find it really difficult to make a fade of speckled yarns. If you don't buy a kit already made up that way, it can be really challenging to put together yarns that flow together without a harsh jog. So I decided my workaround for that was to hold my fingering weight constant, this guy, and then change the mohair colors. So that's what I did. I started off with the darkest color at the top there, and I think you can see about halfway in is when I changed it to the next color in the set. I am really liking it. It's giving me enough of change of color value that by the time I get to the bottom, it's going to be very dramatic, but it's soft enough that I don't have to worry about alternate, I don't have to do the whole knit every other round kind of blending of the colors. The gradient is soft enough that it does it without it being too harsh on the eye. So, and I like it with the speckled because it adds a lot of interest. I'll get closer on that dip stitches. Right, so I'm really excited about this. So again, I've got the Ice Wine set that I dyed. I've made a couple more color gradients. The turquoise tealy set. Let me hold it up like this. Ooh, that's blowing out. That's better. So the brightest color here, and then gets gradually darker. And then I have the blackest black one, which is really, I don't know, I've been debating. I think I might just leave that one out. And if you wanted a fifth color, either to add add yardage, depending on what size sweater you're making, maybe you would add the white. Or the next time I dye it, I need to have this not quite so dark. I need another middle one there. Anyway, but for right now, I've got these four. That's called Kelpie. And then my other colorway set is called Peony, because it's my favorite flower. And that one's got 5. So yeah, what am I envisioning by dyeing these? So my plan with these kits, when you do a sweater, you're going to need probably anywhere between 2 and 3, maybe sometimes even 4, somewhere between 2 and 4 50-gram skeins is what the patterns would call for, depending on your size range, right? So if you were going to get a fade, that's a lot of mohair if you wanted to try to fade your mohair, right? So what I decided to do is get more colors in, but make 25-gram skeins of them. So this is 50 grams and this is 50 grams. And so now that's 2 normal hanks of, but you get 4 colors. And then if you needed to get a little bit more or wanted to add in a 5th color for more seamless drama, you can do that. And you don't have to buy 50 grams. You can just do 25 grams. So what I'll probably end up doing is listing these all in, I'll show it as a kit, but then also have it so you can buy it per skein so that you can, if you needed to get extra yardage, you could easily do that. This is what I get for trying to figure it out on camera, but that's the plan. So again, this is Peony. Whoops. And this is Kelpie. Oh, Kelpie's coming undone. Like that. And then Ice Wine, the purple that I'm using for my sweater. That's all going to be in the shop tomorrow. So if you would like to give that a try, it will be there for you. And again, I'm going to be, right now I have what I've shown you available to ship. More mohair is on the way. It should be here tomorrow. So I can dye those up really quickly. So I will probably put in a dye to order for the, put in what I have individually and then do a dye to order if you want a set. But that won't take me long to get those out to you. Okay? All right, so shop update has got the cowl kits and the self-striping sock yarn and the mohair gradient kits. It's a big shop update. I'm very excited. I hope you will come and check it out. What I'm wearing is my Snowflower pullover by Heidi Kiermaier, I think is how you say her name. And I knit it in Let Lopey, and it's one of my very, very favorite sweaters. I did a contrast on the cuff and on the neckline and on the hem. And yeah, I love it. I did alter the pattern just a little bit. I think I'm sure I knit the biggest size. And then the only thing I changed, I think it wanted a 4th color. I only did the 3, the background, the medium blue, and the dark blue. And on this section here, it was supposed to be the dark blue little dots on the medium blue, and I didn't think there was going to be enough contrast for that, so I just switched it out with the main color. And then I think this was supposed to be an accent pop of color, and I just used the dark color again, the center of the flowers. So I love this sweater. It makes me happy. It's quite large now. I'm not going to go into it, but I've lost a lot of weight recently, and so it's got a whole lot of positive ease, and I don't care. I'm never giving up this sweater. It's great. All right. Well, again, thanks so much for joining me. I've had a really good time. The lighting has changed several times because I've been trying to do this all day. I'm so out of practice, and then memory issues with the phone. I'm so glad. I think the editing is going to make it okay, and that, you know, you won't have to see all the struggles, but you can just know there were struggles. All right, so next time I should be back in the next 2 weeks, and we'll have something new to bake and something fun to knit. In the meantime, take care, knitter bakers.